Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted. From Packers.com, I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Wes Hodkiewicz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to review a down-to-the-wire last-second victory, 24-22, over the Houston Texans on Sunday at Lambeau Field. The Packers have improved to 5-2. There's a lot of ground to cover with regard to this game, Wes, but I think the discussion from this one starts with Jeff Hafley's defense, because while 22 points is not a number where you go, oh, the defense played great, when you watched what happened out there on the field, the defense played great.
It did, Mike, and it was one of the more creative, impressive, and consistent performances I think we've seen from the Packers defense this season. And I don't want to get hyperbolic about it because I just got done with last week saying, okay, they only had 2 quarterback hits on Murray and no sacks, but it was one of their best pass rushing performances. I did feel like they built upon that, though. They built upon it with their 4-man rush. They built upon it with some of their third down blitz packages. And one other trend that some of the guys were talking about after the game, Xavier McKinney among them, is this idea, and it's credit to Brian Flores and the Vikings. They were the ones that kind of started this thing of mugging up all these defensive players and then sometimes sending 4, sometimes sending 7, sometimes dropping guys. You just never know what you're going to get, and the quarterback has to be able to, make sense of everything. And I felt like this game in particular, it wasn't just C.J. Stroud. Their offensive line had a hard time adjusting to those looks. It helped create 4 tackles for a loss for Eric Wilson, 2 sacks in relief of an injured Quay Walker. I think I absolutely love what they're doing with Rashawn Gary. We talked about the need of trying to get him moving around a little bit more, not just having him come off the weak side, being able to kind of build upon some of the traits that we talked about early in his career with having some positional versatility on the line. And then first and foremost, they threw for 86 yards. And whether that's opposition being afraid of attacking the secondary now with having Xavier McKinney over the top of it, whether it's just the time clock of the quarterback getting disrupted, what have you, when you are limiting a quarterback, the reigning NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, to under fewer than 100 passing yards, you're doing something right defensively.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. I mean, Joe Mixon certainly had his share of success. He ends up rushing for over 100 yards. And it was interesting how that evolved, because it felt like either the Packers were stacking up Mixon, at the line of scrimmage, or he was getting 10 or 12 yards. There weren't really a whole lot of just the 4 or 5 yard kind of mediocre runs. It was either they stuffed him or he got an explosive, and through those combinations, he ends up with over 100 yards, and the Packers certainly had their challenge there. But you said it. I mean, the reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year in C.J. Stroud comes into Lambeau Field, throws for only 86 passing yards. It was actually a net passing yards of like 50-some because of the 4 sacks that for like minus 31. And quite frankly, going through the defensive film, and I've got a lot of clips out there on the third downs in my What You Might Have Missed piece for those who want to check that out. The Houston Texans up front, their pass protection, the calls, the communication, whatever it was, they were just not on point. The Packers were confusing them. The Packers were getting them to hesitate, not quite sure, who had whom, what to do. And it led to a lot of frustration for Stroud. I mean, folks were talking about how he tossed his helmet on the sideline, and, the Texans had the ball right at the beginning of the game at the 11-yard line after an interception by Jordan Love, and yet had to settle for a field goal. They had a chance to, potentially put the game away at the end with a first down in the red zone at the 2-minute warning, forcing the Packers to use their timeouts on defense there at the end. But the defense got back-to-back tackles for loss on Joe Mixon and forced the field goal there. The Packers defense had multiple takeaways every game through the first 6 games of the season, almost equaling the number of takeaways from all of last regular season. Not a single takeaway in this game. And this defense proved that it can succeed, it can play well, it can cause problems for opponents, not just because of the takeaways, but because of some of the other things that Jeff Hafley is learning about his guys and learning how to put them in certain positions to cause the offense problems.
In my opinion, the Green Bay Packers won this game. They overcame that turnover deficit because of the situation going on right now with being able to have the defensive front getting after the quarterback the way they did. But beyond that, third downs is huge. You have to be able to contain the opposition in those moments. I think at one point the Texans were 2 of 10. And the adversity situation, the change of game situation, the defense really thrived in those. And I was talking to Kenny Clark about this after the game. And as he said, when you look at an NFL football game, okay, when you are in a spot where you are stepping up and you can stop them, the only time it felt like they were going to be able to score points is when the position was already stacked in their favor.
Yeah.
If they made the Texans drive, they felt like they were getting the stop. So the one real, I mean, there was a stretch of, I think, 4 straight 3-and-outs, at least 3. When they were able to mount that challenge late and the Texans were able to get down the field the way they did, that's when the offense stepped up. That's when Brandon McManus stepped up. I thought this game was a perfect example of different phases lifting each other up at the right time, but the backbone of all of it was the defense holding court the way it did.
Yeah, you said it. Until the Texans' final drive where they kicked the field goal to take the lead with just under 2 minutes to go, they had only converted 2 third downs. They got 2 more third down conversions on that drive to end up 4 out of 13 in the game. But as you said, they were just 2 out of 10 before that last drive. It's another potpourri of individuals stepping up at different times, right? Whether it's Evan Williams getting the stop on the 2-point conversion when they tried to run Joe Mixon from the 1-yard line. And again, that was a 2-point conversion from the 1-yard line because of a defensive penalty that actually moved the ball closer. You mentioned Eric Wilson. He steps in for Quay Walker, not only to play the position, but to handle the communication, to wear the green dot, to relay all the signals to everybody. And Wilson not only keeps everybody defensively on the same page, but with those A-gap looks and some of that confusing stuff they were doing up front, he ends up with 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, a pass deflection on third down that led to a punt. Edgerrin Cooper, we see in whatever role Jeff Hafley is giving him, the rookie linebacker is making an impact when he's out there. Some of this different pass rush stuff, we saw Rashawn Gary kind of getting cut loose a little bit. He was getting some runs at the quarterback because of the stunting and the looping around and trying to get creative in that regard. So there was a lot going on defensively that the Texans really had trouble with. And hey, it's a week-to-week league. Every game plan is going to be different. There are going to be teams, I would say, like the Vikings a few weeks ago, who are going to handle the Packers' pressure packages better than the Texans did. That's going to happen. So then what are your counters? What are your answers? What are the adjustments you're going to make to still try to do things? And so that's where everything with this defense will continue to be an evolution going forward. And on the offensive side, I guess just call it an up and down roller coaster kind of day. Jordan Love's touchdown passes to Tucker Kraft and Dontavian Wicks were absolutely incredible throws, right on the money. Couldn't have put it in a better spot. But he also threw 2 interceptions, obviously, that he'd like to have back. The offense in the second half was backed up 3 times inside its own 20-yard line and went 3 and out and couldn't get a first down on 3 consecutive possessions. So there were all of these ups and downs with the offense. Fortunately, Love was able to put together that 2-minute drive, $1:44 on the clock. Packers need a field goal to win. He completes 4 passes for 39 yards. They get another 5 yards thanks to a defensive offside. And Brandon McManus, the new kicker, comes out to win the game, and the Packers get to 5-2. But yet are looking at the film on offense going, boy, there's so much more, that the Packers could have done in this game. So a lot to learn from. But pulling out a game with a 2-minute drive right at the end, the way Jordan Love did, that's another step forward for that young man at quarterback.
It is, and as Matt LaFleur keeps saying, the superpower of Jordan Love is always being able to move forward. And whatever has happened, it happened. You flush it, you move on to the next play. He doesn't allow those things to affect him. Now, certainly you do need to clean it up. The 8 interceptions, I think, currently leads the NFL. I think the 15 touchdowns also leads the NFL, despite him missing 2 games. This is a big play quarterback, and we've all known that, seeing him last season. The exciting thing for me is that, with the start that he got off to last year and then how steady he was down the stretch, if he can replicate that, Jordan Love is trending in the right way, especially as he's continually getting himself back into a rhythm. What I loved about this game more than anything, though, is it was another reminder, with the defense playing into this as well, that the Green Bay Packers can win football games without being perfect. Offensively, they were not perfect. Too many giveaways, too many 3-and-outs. Special teams, not perfect. You had the muff punt that hits Corey Ballantyne's leg, ends up being in a turnover. You had the situation late where Jaden Reed ends up catching the ball a little too deep, and they have to start deep within their own 10-yard line, their own 5-yard line.
Right.
Certainly, as Matt Orzik, I believe, told Jason Wilde after the game, the snap wasn't where it needed to be on the final field goal attempt. Daniel Whelan made it right. Brandon McManus made the adjustment. They banged it through. So many different guys were able to pull through for this football team. They didn't rupture. They didn't lapse. They were able to continue pushing forward. These are the games I feel like, especially when you're playing a 5-1 football team, that you can learn the most from. Because, Mike, they didn't do this against the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't do this in the opener against the Philadelphia Eagles. They did this against the Texans. They found a way to get that victory. And now as you press forward and you cannot look past the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have to take care of business this week. But they have another one in 2 weeks on deck against the Detroit Lions. The stakes are going to get higher more and more as you press through this season. I feel like early crucibles like this are the things that really galvanize a football team.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as there were all these ups and downs on offense, you said it, there were ups and downs on special teams as well, because there were the miscues on the punt returns. But man, what Daniel Whelan did both as a punter and as a holder in this game, 5 punts, he averages 58 yards gross, but more importantly, 51 yards net. If you're averaging 50-plus yards net punting when you have to punt that many times in a game, that's where your punter is significantly impacting field position. And I mentioned, the 3 straight 3-and-outs when the Packers were backed up. Well, the Texans, after those 3 punts from the Packers being backed up, they didn't start any of those drives in front of their own 40-yard line. I believe it was like the 25, the 32, and then the 38. And the 38 at the end was the one where then they put together their drive to get the field goal. But though when a punter is punting from the goal line, with the snap putting him on the goal line to kick the ball, teams are hoping to be able to get the ball at the 40, the 45, the 50. That didn't happen any of those times when Whelan was kicking. And then with the hold at the end, of course, everything goes perfectly smoothly with the operation when the Texans call the timeout to try to ice McManus, right? Everything is picture perfect. The kick is absolutely right down the middle, splits the uprights. But then you have to do it again. And Whelan got a difficult snap there for McManus. The kick wasn't exactly right down the middle, but it was obviously good, hugging right inside the upright there. That hold, man, you and I were sitting next to each other in the press box, and both of us kind of went,
oh yeah,
when we saw that snap,
it was to our end zone, like that's the one we're nearest to.
Yeah, we had a perfect view of it, and it was oh boy, and you can't give enough credit to Daniel Whelan. He's a second-year punter who really just learned all the nuances and the details and everything that go into holding for place kicks last year as a rookie. And he looks like one of the best in the business right now. It's really been impressive what he's done.
I say this all the time. It was one of my big lines in Inbox today. I could not care less where Daniel Whelan ranks against other punters in the National Football League.
Yeah.
I don't know where his average or his gross average, net average, punts inside the 20. I don't know where any of that stuff figures in. But I've always held this maxim. Same thing with when Mason Crosby was here. Mason Crosby was never a Pro Bowler, and he had a couple down seasons. But for the most part, improved throughout his career and was a real stalwart for them in that area. If you have confidence in your specialist to fulfill the job, that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, when you know you have your guy.
Yep.
Yes, he's not gonna, nobody's 100% perfect. There's gonna be a couple of hiccups here and there, but when you have your guy, that puts everybody at ease. Everybody has the confidence that the job is going to get done.
And punting is so circumstantial too, because you can get to the 45-yard line and then the guy has to punt and he's trying to pin him in there for maybe 36-yard net.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt your average.
Right.
Daniel Whelan, with his body type, with his hands, with everything he brings to the party here for the Packers. He has, while there's been all this consternation over the kicking position the last year and a half, Daniel Whelan has quietly settled the punting thing, which had been a rotating door for the last decade at that position. Basically, since Tim Mastay was let go in 2016, the Packers have been going through one punter after the next.
Yep.
Daniel Whelan's the guy. And it's just been incredible to watch his maturation, because it's not that he just won the job and then, okay, well, now you just roll with him. No, I mean, this guy has become one of the real, central characters of this football team.
Yeah.
With the way in which he's affecting field position.
Yeah, he's an anchor. He's an anchor on this special teams unit. There's no question about that. I'm going to take care of a little bit of sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, well, the good news is the Packers are 5-2. The bad news is 5-2 is only good for third place in the NFC North, because the Detroit Lions squeaked it out against the Minnesota Vikings in a wildly entertaining game. I mean, I obviously wasn't watching it, but I watched the highlights, and I was kind of like, wow, did everybody get their money's worth in that one as well? Detroit beats Minnesota on a late field goal after blowing an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter. Detroit is 5-1. Minnesota is 5-1. Green Bay is 5-2. And the Chicago Bears, who were on their bye this past week, are 4-2. There are, if I counted it correctly, Wes, after Tampa Bay's loss on Monday Night Football to the Baltimore Ravens, I believe 6 of the 8 divisions in the NFL have a team with at least 5 wins. There are 2 divisions that do not. Do I have that right? What?
6.
6 of the 8. Yeah.
Yep.
6 of the 8 have a team with 5 wins, 5 or more wins. My point is, the NFC North is the only one with more than one team with 5 wins, and the NFC North has 3.
And also the AFC North now, because Baltimore won last night.
Oh, because Baltimore.
So Baltimore and
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
So the AFC. Yeah. That's right, because
in the NFC, they're the only team.
Because that's right. Baltimore got its 5th win, and Pittsburgh also has 5 wins because they won on Sunday Night Football against.
They ran through the Jets.
So 2 divisions in the NFL with multiple teams with 5+, but the NFC North has 3 teams with 5+ wins. This race for the division championship, the Packers have played the Vikings, and the Vikings got that win. The Vikings have played the Lions, and the Lions got that win. Those are the only division games that have been played so far. This race for the division title is barely getting started.
I've heard so many good things about Cole Kmet down in Chicago, and just watching him from afar, I've gained a lot of appreciation for the way he speaks, obviously the way he plays. And it was really interesting on Monday, as the Bears were getting back from their bye week, he met with the media, and they were asking him about the North, and he said, yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about this. I mean, why would you be? You don't necessarily want to be in a situation where you're having to be 4-2 and in 4th place right now.
Yeah.
But as he said, these are also the games you want to play in. This is the type of competition you want to have, especially for a young team like that trying to improve. It is going to be an absolute barn burner to the finish line. I just don't think there's going to be any scenario in the next month that would change that. There's going to be so many division games in the NFC North that are going to really dictate not only who's in the lead of this thing to try claiming that championship, but also trying to get into the playoffs there. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. I felt the Detroit-Minnesota game, you mentioned the down-to-the-wire nature of that thing. One, I think it worked out to Green Bay's benefit, the fact that Detroit won. They got that 0 finally off of the Minnesota Vikings. But 2, it was another reminder that it wasn't like Detroit or Minnesota played poorly. Both of those teams did exactly what they've been doing. Jahmyr Gibbs was fantastic in that game.
He was.
Jared Goff got off to another incredible start, 12 straight completions to start that game. Aaron Jones came back from the hamstring injury to have a very Aaron Jones-type performance. Sam Darnold, with the exception of one interception, was very efficient for them. those teams are good football teams, good, well-coached football teams, and the Packers are going to have their hands full in 2 weeks against the Lions. But that being said, the North is as difficult and as treacherous as everybody's making it out to be. There's just so many playmakers in this division, and honestly, I think a part of that, Packers have been what they've been, but all these teams have made really savvy offseason moves, whether it's the drafting of the Chicago Bears, whether it's the Detroit Lions with their process that they've been going through the last 4 years, or Minnesota just completely overhauling the roster last season.
Yeah, and I think there's, in some ways, there's already a lesson to be learned from the 2 division games that have been played so far in the NFC North, because we saw the Vikings get up 28-0 on the Packers, where nothing was going right for Green Bay. Everything is going right for Minnesota. And then the Packers make this furious comeback and end up losing by just 2, right? Then you look at how that Lions-Vikings game went on Sunday. The Vikings jump on top 10-0 in the early portion of the game. The middle portion of the game, the Lions completely dominate the Vikings by, I believe, a 28-7 count, because then the score is 28-17 heading into the fourth quarter. Then the Vikings score 12 straight points to go ahead 29-28. And then the Lions they had the ball last kind of thing and end up getting in position to make the field goal. And actually I don't know the details of it, but I saw some kind of a headline that referred to, if it hadn't been for the Vikings got the ball back with like 15 seconds to go. And if it hadn't been for some kind of a penalty on Minnesota, they would have had a chance at a 68-yard field
Illegal
goal.
formation.
Illegal formation, that's what it was. They would have had a chance at a 68-yard field goal, and apparently they were going to let Will Reichard, the rookie kicker, they were going to let him try it.
You're in U.S. Bank.
Yeah, they were going to let him try that, and it didn't happen, because then they ended up getting backed up another 5 yards. But my point is, we've seen 2 NFC North division games so far, and they've both been just these back and forth kind of, wild and crazy type of affairs. So whether it's, the Lions and the Bears, the Packers and the Bears, the Lions and the Packers in a couple weeks, I think these are the kind of games that we can expect in this division the rest of the way.
All these games are going to be in the second half of the season too. Like I mentioned, I think on the last show, the Lions and Packers are the only one before week 10 now. So, I mean, you will have had 2-3 at that point division matchups in the first 9 weeks of the season. That's remarkable. The Packers will have finished up against the AFC South by the time they play their second NFC North team.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. And that last AFC South team the Packers have to play is the Jacksonville Jaguars. That will be this week's upcoming opponent. We'll talk about them more on our next show. You got anything else?
I'm not letting you leave yet. One, we also got to make sure we talk about the NFL draft. We got to get that in.
I do. I'm ready for that.
Before you do that, though,
okay,
I need to mention one last thing, because when we transitioned to the segment the first time, I wasn't completely done talking about this matchup against the Houston Texans. So I'm going to give you my 3 stars, my 3 underrated stars that we have not discussed yet. We don't have to. But I just want to make sure this goes on the record.
I want to hear it now.
Okay. Josh Jacobs had his first NFL receiving touchdown. The Packers had that in all week. They finally got it into play. He scores. That was really cool and noteworthy. And then there was some really nice banter back and forth about it being whether he should keep the football, Tucker Kraft giving it to him wanting to give it to Jordan Love because it was his 50th passing touchdown. We'll see where that ends up happening. It was even more important, though, the fact that Josh Jacobs had 12 carries for 76 yards, the reversals, the end arounds, the receiver stuff. Houston was hip to it. And the Packers stayed in front of that, though, with how Josh Jacobs ran the football. 2, Romeo Doubs balled out on Sunday. 8 catches, 94 yards. I don't know if there was a single one of them that wasn't meaningless. Every single one of them, including on the final drive to set up the touchdown.
Yeah.
Insane game by Rome, and showed really good hands throughout that. I mean, again, the possession receiver that I think has become the Jordy Nelson, the Devontae Adams to Jordan Love, that Adams and Nelson were to Rodgers. Lastly, Stephon Diggs, for all the pomp and circumstance before the games, had 5 catches for 23 yards. I believe this was Bill Rabier who had mentioned this to me while we were waiting to go in the locker room. I believe it was in 9 games. He has like 10 touchdowns against Green Bay.
Yeah, he had had a streak. He had had a streak of, I believe it was 8 consecutive games against the Packers between his time with Minnesota, obviously when he was playing twice a year, and then also with Buffalo. he had scored a touchdown against the Packers like 8 straight times, and he didn't come close to one on Sunday.
Nico Collins isn't on the field. That's a huge loss for them. The Packers pressured C.J. Stroud constantly, but I think that's a huge credit to Jair Alexander. It's a huge credit to Keyshawn Nixon when he was matched up and how Green Bay defended it. You can say what you want about Jair, but I'm telling you, man, just guy is one heck of an NFL cornerback.
Yeah, he is.
That's it. Now I'm done talking.
No, that's okay. Sorry I didn't let you get to that stuff.
No, it was okay. We talked about a lot already. There was a lot to discuss out of this game, but it was just like once we get to Thursday, it's not going to be able to discuss it as much. Dobbs, Jacobs, and Ja, I felt like had 3 of the most noteworthy performances without having an insane touchdown catch like Tucker Kraft or, the TFLs and the sacks and everything. It just, they were just so consistent. The Packers don't win this game without them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'll pay you in paper and coin.
No, I have to pay you back now with this NFL draft promo because the countdown to the 2025 NFL draft in Green Bay has begun. Mark your calendars for April 24th through April 26th, 2025, and visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information.
That's 6 months away, bruv.
I know.
Unbelievable.
We have a lot to get through before then, but yeah, you're right. It's only
6 months away.
It's only 6 months.
When you get to advanced age like you and I, like 6 months is not that far away. Like to a 15-year-old, they'd be like, "Oh, that's like 3 years away, dude." But I mean, like to me, it's like we're gonna blink and that's gonna be here already.
Yes, we are gonna blink. So keep your eyes open because we got a lot of football left in 2024 when we get to the draft in 2025. But with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.